first got my Triostar Stromanthe in March of this year. So I've had this plant for approximately 5 months now. I ordered it online along with 2 calatheas and a Persian shield. While this plant is an incredible beauty, I didn't have much time to admire it that first month because one of the plants from the online order arrived with a spider mite infestation, and it ended up killing a Calathea ornata and the Persian shield, which was actually really upsetting. A Rosiopicta, or rose-painted Calathea, barely survived. So out of the 4, only 2 plants that came with this Triostar Stromanthe survived. And the Stromanthe wasn't unaffected by this sudden spider mite infestation. However, one of the first things I learned about Stromanthe is that they can be pretty tough or pretty resistant in their own way. I was able to use neem oil to treat the Stromanthe as well as mechanical removal of the spider mites, and it bounced back quickly without any signs of infestation. And just to note, by mechanical removal, I mean that I sprayed the spider mites off thoroughly with a sturdy spray bottle that was filled with distilled water. Aside from the spider mite infestation, the Stromanthe arrived with some pretty noticeable damage to its foliage, including brown spots and these rough cuts. And what I mean by that is that many of the tips had been cut off at a very harsh, blunt angle, which I assume was to hide brown tips on leaves just before shipping. And honestly, I would have preferred to deal with the brown tips myself, as the harsh angle, the blunt angle of the cuts was actually really distracting, and it went against the grain, the natural pattern of the Stromanthe's leaves. However, as it's grown in the last 5 months with lots of new foliage coming up, it's really filled out and grown just beautifully. So despite a rough start, the Stromanthe has thrived since it got here. Like a Calathea, it thrives in bright and direct light, though it will tolerate and maybe even enjoy some direct morning sun, maybe through an eastern window, nothing too intense. And also, like a Calathea, it prefers distilled water. So it doesn't do well with chlorinated or mineral-rich water, which is what I have out of the tap. So I do stick to store-bought distilled water. However, you can certainly distill your own water at home on the stove. And I would say that one of the ways that I've really learned to make sure that I'm not overwatering my Stromanthe is I've taken to using a wooden dowel to test for moisture in the soil. Taking the wooden dowel and putting it all the way down to the bottom of the pot, and then pulling it out to see exactly how much moisture I get along the entire wooden stick. And while I never really want the Stromanthe to dry out completely, I want to make sure that the roots aren't constantly wet so that they are able to take in oxygen. Because while plants, of course, do need to be able to take in water, they also have to get that oxygen so they don't suffocate. And in terms of the soil, that can be important as well. So I do keep the Stromanthe in the same soil I keep a Calathea, which means that it's very rich, but it's also well draining with a large amount of perlite mixed in. And so all of my plants have pots with drainage holes. I think it's really important not to let water sit at the bottom of the pot, of course. You don't want to suffocate your plant, and you don't want its roots to rot away. One of the things that I didn't quite expect was that the Stromanthe is both heliotropic as well as nyctinastic. The same as a Calathea, which means that its leaves move a lot over the course of 24 hours. It might stretch its leaves out during the day to take in light and then raise them straight up at night. It hangs out with my Calathea medallion on the kitchen table here, and they both sort of dance around all hours of the day and night together. And being so close to my Calathea medallion also means that my cats really like to hang out with my Stromanthe too. They spend a lot of time sneaking on the table to sniff and rub against the calathea, and so they've become equally curious about the Stromanthe. And here's a quick warning. There's not a lot online about whether or not Stromanthe are safe for pets, so be warned. Some people reason that they must be like a calathea in that way, but no one really seems to know. My cats don't bite or chew at my Stromanthe or my calatheas, and the only plants they actually want to bite are my pothos, so I'm careful to keep them clear away from those vines. However, just be aware, there's not a lot out there about whether or not Stromanthe are pet safe. When it comes to feeding my Stromanthe, I do fertilize it every other month. Even now, as it's still late summer and it's getting new growth. So I use a balanced fertilizer and I dilute the strength by half of what's recommended to avoid burning the roots. And it's done really well with that. I've been surprised by how much it's grown since I've had it. It's formed 2 entirely new rhizomes, and new leaves were also growing out of already established rhizomes. So I anticipate that by next year, I might actually need to start dividing this plant. So aside from plant care, I will say this about the Triostar. It is absolutely stunning. While some people consider this to be a really good plant to give to someone over the holidays, specifically Christmas, I get a little confused by when people describe the plant as being green, white, and red. I don't see this at all. For me, the undersides are what I would describe as an impossibly vibrant fuchsia, and the leaves themselves are varying colors of green and pink and cream. And the pattern on the leaves it's just incredibly graphic. It's like something a modern artist would conceptualize, maybe as a choppy gradient or a cubic gradient. My fusion white calathea has a similar look to its leaves, and I have to say that I find this sort of pattern to just be spectacularly beautiful and really incredibly modern. So all in all, I would say that in my experience, the Stromanthe is a pretty easy houseplant to care for. It seems to be relatively resistant to bugs and disease, and as long as I give it bright and direct light and distilled water, and I have good soil and try to fertilize it here and there, it's really just grown quickly and beautifully. And as a calathea lover, I wasn't at all disappointed by its relative, the Stromanthe. So thanks for watching, and until next time, be well and take care.